Good evening and welcome, everyone. It is now 6:30 and I will call the December 20th, 2020 City of Cuyahoga Falls Council meeting to order. Ms. Capriello, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Balthus?
Here.
Mr. Brohart?
Here.
Mr. Gorbach?
Here.
Mr. Ayula?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Ms. Loza?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Nichols Rhodes?
Here.
Mrs. Penta?
Here.
Mrs. Spinner?
Here.
Mr. Stams?
Here.
Thank you. All council members are present. We will now have the invocation by Mrs. Spinner.
Thank you. Dear God, thank you for each mind and heart that fills these video screens today. Bless this meeting, all those present, and the members of the community that we serve. Amen.
Thank you. And we will now have our Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before you should have the minutes from our previous meeting, which was December the 14th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, they will stand as written. Ms. Capriello, do we have any readings or petitions?
Yes, Mr. President. We have a letter from Mr. Austin Rao, Task Force LLC, 830 Jefferson Avenue, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, 44221, dated December 14, 2020, and attached to these minutes. We also have a letter from Mayor Don Walters dated December 23, 2020, regarding his appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Library Board, and Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will entertain a motion to recess into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of discussing and approving the mayor's appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Library Board, and the Planning Commission.
So moved.
That was Mr. Gorbach.
Yes.
We have a second?
Second.
Mr. James. All those in favor of recessing into Committee of the Whole, please signify by saying yes. And I would like to remind you all to please unmute your devices. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, we are now into the Committee of the Whole. And Mayor Walters, you have, looks like 4 very excellent qualified people here. If you would like to discuss them, we could start with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I would love to. Thank you, Mr. President. There's 2 reappointments and 2 new appointments. So I will start at the top. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mr. Caruso is a reappointment, and he is offered to serve a new 5-year term, which expires 12/31 of 2025. I do not see him on the Zoom call. However, he was reviewed the first time he was appointed. He's done a spectacular job, and we're really happy to have him to do another term. So any questions, I can answer that regarding Ed. Next is, I'll jump down one because Dan Rice is also a reappointment to the Planning Commission, and he's the chair right now. I assume he probably will be moving forward, but he's going to be reappointed to a new 6-year term, expires 12/31 of 2026. And if anyone's been to the Planning Commission meetings, he does a very great job on there. We're happy to have him for another term. The 2 new appointments I see on the call tonight, so they're here if you would like to ask anything of them. And the first is the Library Board. Nikki Sebula is on the call. She is extremely qualified, all kinds of degrees, lives on 21st Street, active in the community, and just wants to get more active. This is a perfect place to be. Library Board is a very important position, and that is for a new 3-year term expires 12/31 of 2023. And she's here if you have any questions for Nikki. And then the last is a new appointment, which is Wes Johnston. And I think most of you know Wes. Ironically, he's vacating the library board position that is filled by Nikki. So I would say he's a veteran to the boards and commissions, but council knows this, but if there's anyone on the public, this is really the inner workings of government. And without these people serving, these great people serving, it comes to a screeching halt. This is really where the work gets done, the detail-oriented work gets done, and we almost always go by their guidance because they put the work into it. They're very dedicated. So I want to thank Wes, Nikki, and Ed and Dan for serving on these very important commissions. And as I mentioned, the new appointees, Wes and Nikki, are on the call tonight. So I respectfully ask for your confirmation.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the appointees? Mrs. Spinner.
Hi, thank you, Mr. President. Not a question, but I just want to personally congratulate my great friend Nikki Sabula for her appointment. I know she is way overqualified and is going to do a fabulous job. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would like to thank each and every one of you. I think
Mike
it's.
Scorbach has a.
Oh,
has
okay.
raised.
I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. The mayor actually gave an excellent review of how much these boards and commissions mean to council and the work they do. So I can't do better than he did. So I appreciate the comments, Mr. Mayor, and I agree. Hey, Wes, there's a word. It's 2 letters. It's called no. And I'm just glad you haven't learned to use that word when we ask you to be on these various boards and commissions. Well, you're definitely experienced, and we're glad to have you. And certainly, we're in good hands when you're on these boards. So thanks a lot. And Ms. Sabula, you as well. I know I don't know you personally, but thank you very much for agreeing to be on the library board. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbach. Any other questions or comments? All righty. Once again, thank you. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the mayor's appointees to these to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Library Board, Planning Commission, to approve bringing that out to vote on full council.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach, a second by Mr. Ayula. All those in favor of bringing this out, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Passes unanimously. I will now entertain a motion to dissolve the committee of the whole and to reconvene into regular council.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Who seconded that? Mr. Ayula? Okay, we have a motion and a second to reconvene to regular council. Please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, we are now reconvened to regular council. And we're gonna jump ahead here, and we're gonna go right to reports of special committees. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the mayor's appointees to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Library Board, and the Planning Commission.
So moved.
Mr. Gorbach, and who seconded that?
I did.
Mr. James. All those in favor of the mayor's appointees, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good choices. Okay, we will now have introduction of new ordinances and resolutions.
Temporary ordinance A-110, presented by the administration upon recommendation of the Planning Commission. An ordinance approving a zoning map amendment for parcels 35-00402 and 35-00517 4344, and 4356 Cuyahoga Lake Road from E1 Employment District to MU3 Suburban Center and declaring an emergency.
Planning and zoning, Mr. James.
I would also like to announce that there will be a public hearing on temporary ordinance A110 held on Monday, February 1, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. Temporary ordinance A111, presented by the administration upon recommendation of the Planning Commission. An ordinance accepting the Planning Commission recommendations for the expansion to the existing Summit DD building at 2355 2nd Street by the Summit County Developmental Disabilities Board and the construction of a new public parking lot by the city of Cuyahoga Falls on Front Street and declaring an emergency.
Planning and zoning, Mr. James.
Temporary ordinance A112, presented by the administration upon recommendation of the Planning Commission. An ordinance accepting the Planning Commission recommendation for the construction of a two-story, 12,120 square foot medical office facility at 1625 Portage Trail and declaring an emergency.
Planning and zoning, Mr. James.
Temporary ordinance A113, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contractor contracts according to law with the Thrasher Group for construction, engineering, and inspection services for the improvements to Zurich Trail, Sand Hill Drive, and Cubic Drive, and declaring an emergency.
Public and industrial improvements, Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Temporary ordinance A114, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a real estate purchase agreement with River Run Commons LLC according to law and an amount not to exceed $55,000, utilizing community development block grant funds for the purchase of certain property known as E/L Germain Street, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio 44221, parcel 02-00381, and a memorandum of understanding with Habitat for Humanity of Summit County for the construction of a single-family residential unit for a low to moderate income family and declaring an emergency.
Community development, Mrs. Penta. Okay, thank you. We have no public hearings tonight, and we've already done our report of special committees, so we'll go right to the report of council standing committees. Planning and zoning, Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, the Planning and Zoning Committee has one piece of legislation to vote on, temporary ordinance A81.
Temporary ordinance A81, presented by the administration upon recommendation of the Planning Commission. An ordinance approving a zoning map amendment for parcel 02-00234, 2404 7th Street from R4 Urban Density Residential to MU4 Suburban Corridor as more fully described and depicted herein and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, the Planning and Zoning Committee is in favor of temporary ordinance A81, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. James and a second by Ms. Nichols Rhodes to approve temporary ordinance A81. Are there any remarks?
No remarks, sir.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A81, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously, 11-0.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. James. Finance and appropriations, Mr. Gorbach.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. We have 10 pieces of legislation to vote on this evening, beginning with temporary ordinance A97.
Temporary ordinance A97, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the city of Monroe Falls, Ohio, to extend the existing agreement for water services to Monroe Falls and declaring an emergency.
The finance voted in favor of bringing this out for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A97. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A97, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A98, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase of the city's requirements for certain materials, supplies, and equipment for use by the Electric Division during 2021 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee voted in favor of temporary ordinance A98 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve temporary ordinance A98 by Mr. Gorbach with a second by Mrs. Spinner. Are there any remarks?
No remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A98, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A99, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase of annual requirements of certain materials and supplies for use by the Street Department during 2021 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee is in favor of temporary ordinance A99 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A99. Are there any remarks?
No remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A99, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A100, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase of annual requirements of certain materials and supplies for use by the Sanitation Division during 2021 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee voted in favor of temporary ordinance A100 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mrs. Spinner to approve temporary ordinance A100. Are there any remarks?
I have none.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A100, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A101, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase of the city's requirements of certain services, materials, and supplies for use by the Water and Sewer Division during 2021 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A101 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A101. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A101, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Yes.
Temporary ordinance A102, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the mayor as Director of Public Safety or the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase or lease of various vehicles and related equipment for use by the city and declaring an emergency.
Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A102 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mrs. Spinner to approve temporary ordinance A102. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A102, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A103, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the purchase of annual requirements of certain materials, supplies, and services for use by the Garage Division during 2021 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A103 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A103. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A103, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously, 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A104, presented by the administration. An ordinance levying special assessments for the repair or replacement of sidewalks and drive approaches in the Sidewalk and Drive Approach Repair and Replacement District for the year 2020 and declaring an emergency.
The Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A104 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
Just a correction, Dane, I think you read for the year 2020 and it. Yep, that's correct. Okay, sorry.
I move,
Okay,
Mr. President, I moved to, for a vote on temporary ordinance A104.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mrs. Spinner to approve temporary ordinance A104. Any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A104, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously, 11-0.
temporary ordinance A105, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for disposal of municipal solid waste and declaring an emergency.
Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A105 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Gorbach and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A105. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A105, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously, 11-0.
Temporary ordinance A106, presented by the administration. An ordinance providing for supplemental and/or amended appropriations of money for current operating expenses and capital expenditures of the city of Cuyahoga Falls and authorizing the transfer of appropriations within and for the various funds hereinafter set forth and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, the Finance Committee voted in favor of bringing out temporary ordinance A106 for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion to approve temporary ordinance A106 by Mr. Gorbach with a second by Mrs. Spinner. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A106, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously, 11-0.
That concludes the lengthy finance report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbach. Public and industrial improvements, Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Yes, Mr. President, we have two items to be voted on tonight. We have temporary ordinance A107 and temporary resolution A108.
All right. I don't have the last two. They didn't give them to me in the office. All right, temporary ordinance A107, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts according to law for the replacement or adjustment of concrete sidewalks, drive approaches, and curbs at various locations in the city of Cuyahoga Falls and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, the Public and Industrial Improvements Committee voted in favor of bringing temporary ordinance A107 out for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion to approve temporary ordinance A107 by Ms. Nichols Rhodes with a second by Mr. Ayula. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A107, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
Resolution A108, presented by the administration. A resolution creating for the year 2021 sidewalk and drive approach repair or replacement district containing such streets, alleys, or public roadways within the corporate limits of the city of Cuyahoga Falls, declaring the necessity of repairing or replacing the sidewalks and drive approaches abutting on such streets, alleys, or public roadways within said corporate limits, and providing the method for levying special assessments and declaring an emergency.
The Public and Industrial Improvements Committee voted in favor of bringing temporary resolution 108 out for a vote this evening, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Nichols Rhodes with a second by Mr. Stams to approve temporary resolution 108, A108. Are there any remarks?
No remarks.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary resolution A108, please signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
And that concludes our report for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols Rhodes. Public Affairs, Mr. Balthus.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Affairs Committee has no report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Community Development, Mrs. Penta.
Yes, Mr. President. Tonight we have one item to consider. It's temporary ordinance A109.
Temporary ordinance A109, presented by the administration. An ordinance authorizing the Director of Community Development to amend the Community Reinvestment Area Tax Exemption Agreement with Buckeye Sports Center, Inc. to reflect the title of land transfer to Sunsport Properties LLC, a subsidiary to Buckeye Sports Center, Inc., and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, the Community Development Committee is in favor of A109, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Penta and a second by Mr. Ayula to approve temporary ordinance A109. Are there any remarks?
I have no remarks. Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of temporary ordinance A109, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes unanimously 11-0.
And Mr. President, that concludes the Community Development Committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Penta. We will now move on to the schedule of announcements to our next committee meetings. The next meeting will be January the 4th, 2021. And that night, I will announce is also going to be our annual organizational meeting as well. But I'll go through the committees for the January 4th meeting. Planning and Zoning, Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning and Zoning Committee will hold a meeting on January 4th, 2021 at 6:30 to discuss temporary ordinances 111 and 112. And a reminder to all that there will be a public hearing to discuss temporary ordinance A110 on February 1st, 2021 at 6:30.
Thank you, Mr. James. Finance and Appropriations, Mr. Gorbach.
Subject to call.
Thank you. Public and Industrial Improvements, Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Yes, we will meet on Monday, January 4th, 2021 at 6:35 p.m.
Thank you. Public Affairs, Mr. Balthus.
Subject to call, Mr. President.
And Community Development, Mrs. Penta.
We will meet Monday, January 4th, 2021 at 6:40.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before council tonight? Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, one thing I'm going to slide in here too is we know Christmas Day, there was a crazy snowstorm and our city did an amazing job of clearing the roads. I had to work. And so I thought maybe because it was Christmas Day, it might not be as up to speed as our normal expectation, but I was wrong. It was great. Our city streets were really well done. So thank you to our city. And then the other thing that I wanted to announce tonight, so most of you are familiar, of course, with Heritage Ohio, which is a nonprofit organization that works on main streets in Ohio. And our downtown is part of Heritage Ohio, the Main Street portion of it. And they gave out awards this year, and our Fred Guerra, who's on our Zoom call, has earned the award of Outstanding Leader in Revitalization for 2020. And I won't be able to share the video, but I'm going to play so that you can hear the audio of what they said about Fred. So hang on. Or not.
Heritage Ohio is pleased to present the Outstanding Leader in Revitalization Award to Fred Guerra of Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. The Outstanding Revitalization Leader Award was created to recognize standout public officials whose dedication to revitalizing their downtown inspire community-wide support for their future. Fred has been recognized for his outstanding leadership in his role in helping Cuyahoga Falls in the revitalization process. Numerous studies with active public participation have contributed to Cuyahoga Falls being listed on the National Register, implementing the Certified Local Government Program, the launching of 7 historic tax credit projects, and entering into the Main Street family. But the most dramatic change has been the reopening of Front Street, which had been closed for 40 years, now enabling businesses and residents to use their downtown again.
All right. So certainly we know it was a team effort, and the mayor's vision of getting Front Street opened was, the major part of it, and the whole administration and so many people worked on it. But Fred, as the planner for all these years, has obviously been very instrumental in putting all the pieces in place to move us the right way forward on Front Street. So Fred, congratulations. That's a pretty big award.
Thank you. Let's all give Fred a round of applause.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols Rose. Anything else to come before council?
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Frank.
Mr. Brillhart, Chairman Brillhart, I would just like to add to that a personal testimony. I was out driving around today, and I found myself driving through the Front Street corridor, and never have I seen such activity in all my 55 years in Cuyahoga Falls. The kids were out, and some adults were out ice skating in the ice skating rink, and they were visiting the popcorn shop. And this just was a lot of hustle and bustle during the holidays, and it was really, really cool to see that. So just to build upon Ms. Nichols Rhodes' comments, congratulations, Fred, and congratulations, Mayor, and the rest of council for the vision and the development of that area.
Thank you, Mr. Stams. Mr. Ayula.
Yeah, I'd like to also say, like Mary did, about how great the snow shoveling was. When I didn't get up real early on Christmas, but about 1:10 in the afternoon, my little dead end street that only has 8 houses was totally shoveled. And I thought that was very nice. And also a few of you have known that I've actually had the COVID for the last 2 weeks. And today I went to the doctor and I'm doing much better. I'm actually can do a few things now. And I appreciate the comments from Russ and Susan and Mike and all of you that, that cared about it. And I want to tell you, it's not easy. And if you guys get it, just stay home and God bless you, because it has not been fun the last 2 weeks. And the person that I got it from will never say, but I still love them.
Thank you, Mr. Ayula, and we wish you a very speedy recovery. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Gorbach.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take a little different tack than Mary. I wanted, I can't help myself. I want to congratulate Fred, though. Worked with him on and off many years on different projects and talked to him a lot. I too have some recordings of some comments about Mr. Guerra that I will not play for council at a public meeting tonight. But just kidding, Fred. You've done a great job in a lot of tough situations. There's no doubt about it. But you're a good communicator, and you definitely care about the city. And I think we all know that, and I think the residents do too. So thanks for all your work and all your years at the city. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbach. I'd like to also say, kind of piggyback on what Mr. Stam said. You know, I've lived in Cuyahoga Falls since 1961, and I remember back then, you know, Front Street used to have a lot of activity. But today, I mean, even with our pandemic and all that, I try to drive through Front Street at least 3 times a day. And I just absolutely love it. And, you know, the activity down there is really amazing. And it's just absolutely fabulous. And, you know, this being the last meeting of the year, we are truly blessed in so many ways. And it's a good group. I fully enjoy working with everybody. And it's a team that's put together by the mayor of a lot of folks that work for the city who just do an excellent job making this. I'm just going to piggyback on what you said, Mayor. Everybody either wants to live in Cuyahoga Falls or lives in Cuyahoga Falls. There's only 2 kinds of people. And it really, we are so fortunate to live here. And some of the comments that we all get from our constituents, I had one this morning from a great constituent that unfortunately had to have our paramedic services, and just all kind of accolades of how great service that they had, and just couldn't be more pleased. And there's just so many things that we do so well here. And it's just absolutely a fabulous city. And I'm so happy to be a part of it. And I certainly wish everybody good health, and we have a much better year in 2021. So,
Sure.
Any
President?
Mr. Balthus.
You know, I can't help myself when we talk about downtown for more than like 3 seconds. I have to jump in just because it's such an amazing transformation. I do have to say congratulations to Fred. As somebody who worked with him during that process, I know he poured his heart and soul into that project and put in a lot of extra time. He was not calling it quits at 5 o'clock. I can assure you that. And I think that the public involvement that the mayor and Fred and everyone at the city really engaged in the downtown project is why it was as successful as it's been. And as everyone said, you know, something I shared this with the mayor a few weeks ago. I was walking over to Leo's to get takeout, and I saw a young family walking by, and the child had to stop and get their picture taken with the parking meter that the mayor had decorated with the chimney, with the snowman or the Santa Claus standing on top in the kayak. And to just see the joy on the child's face and the excitement and downtown and all the shops that have decorated their windows, it's just really exciting. And it means a lot, especially in such a difficult year when I know a lot of people are really struggling to make ends meet, particularly small businesses. I'm just very proud of all the work they did this year to decorate downtown and to really bring people together and create a very, very special place to help people celebrate the holiday season in a year that I think it was particularly needed. So just want to thank all the businesses for everything they do downtown. Thank all the people at the city and the mayor for the meters and all the work that they did. And none of it would have been possible without Fred's help and pulling together the planning and making sure it would all work. And so congratulate him on that. I can't think of a much better deserved award. And the only other thing, I think we did have a great year. And Jeff, hang in there, take care of yourself, and let me know if you need anything. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Balthus. Any other questions or comments?
Move to adjourn.
And I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Here.
Bye, everybody.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.